It's time for Howlers and Growlers. A weekly show from our Arizona Coyotes writing pack, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, prospects, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, our team covers everything ice hockey in the hot desert. So sit back, grab your favorite cold beverage, and get ready for Howlers and Growlers.
Welcome to Howlers and Growlers. I'm your host, Pat Brown. Joining me, as always, my line mate, Haynes Evans. Haynes, how you doing?
Doing well. What about you, Pat?
I'm doing great, I have to say. I'm admiring that shirt. What do you got for us?
It's the took a while. Took a while, but I finally got my beer league champ shirt in from Bring Hockey Back. Sorry to Coors if they copyright sue us for this video, but love the shirt. Big fan of it. Already have so many people asking when they're gonna see it in person. So debut tonight on the show.
If we get a cease and desist from Coors, we've made it. Let me tell you.
Yeah. That's
Also joining us tonight, a great friend of the show, managing editor of the Coyotes blog, 5 for Howling, and co-host on Locked on Coyotes, Carl Pavlock. Thanks for coming back, Carl. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's been a fun midpoint in the season. Happy to be back.
Halfway home for sure. So just a reminder for you at home, this week's show is being brought to you by Morning Skate, a daily newsletter delivered to your inbox Monday through Friday, and it is jam-packed with the best hockey stuff on the planet. It is a daily dose of the latest NHL news, rumors, history, funnies, quizzes, etc. Just a little hockey fun and information brought to you every day of the week from the Hockey Writers. You'll see a link down there in the show description. So check it out, sign up. You won't regret it. And toss us a like while you're at it. Why not? You're here, right? So, all right, we got some hockey to talk about. Actually, we've got quite a bit to talk about. But in the spirit of the show, let's kick it off with what you're rocking this week. And I'll go ahead and start. Got a Santan Sex Panther rocking a double chocolate porter, so going heavy. But I got a 3-mile run after we taped, so I got a carb load, right? That's what I'm going with. Guests next, Carl. What you got?
I picked up Pipeworks Catching Some Rays. It's a citrus saison. Never had it, but I was at Tops on in Tempe, and I was like, yeah, might as well get it. Looks refreshing.
Nice. I like it. Solid. Haynes, bring us home. What you got?
Yeah, I'm rocking a cider. I'm going off. I'm a cider guy. I'm rocking a Red's blueberry cider. I am rocking my new Yeti cup I got for free at work with the Goon Squad Bring Hockey Back sticker they gave me. So this is the Goon Squad cup I'm drinking out of. So I'm drinking out of the Goon Squad cup.
I don't know how much Bring Hockey Back is paying you, but not enough is the answer to that question.
I will, if they're listening to this, I'll gladly sponsor. I'll gladly be a sponsor.
I was trying to think. The first ever hard cider I ever had, by the way, was Woodchuck. I don't know if you've ever had that.
I've had a Woodchuck. Woodchuck's good.
I don't even know if it's still around, but it was like 20 years ago. So anyways, all right. As much as I love talking about drinking, we got some talkie to talk about, and we're gonna dive right in because I don't know if you guys have been paying attention lately, but surprise, the Jakob Chychrun hype and trade rumors are at a fever pitch. It's a basic question, right? Is this gonna happen? Is Chychrun gonna get traded? And just really quick, a little context. Jeff Merrick from Sportsnet indicated the asking price that GM Bill Armstrong's asking for is a young player, a prospect, and a first-round pick. E.g., the Florida Panthers, Spencer Knight, Anton Lundell, and a first-rounder. Rumored potentially to be an offer there. Cannot substantiate that. Have zero evidence outside of Google to be, full disclosure. Not trying to start rumors. But just imagine that type of deal for a minute. And tell me how GM Bill Armstrong could say no to that type of return for Jakob Chychrun. So, Carl, I want to start with you here. Jakob Chychrun and the trade rumors around him, they continue to heat up. Is this thing going to happen? Is Chychrun as good as gone?
So ever since the rumor, the Florida offer was put out, I think everyone's been talking about it. I personally don't think it fits with the Coyotes. I think the team is still high on Prospetov. I think the team is doing the right thing by keeping him in Tucson to develop. I think they have a good goalie in Vejmelka as a possible 1B for a Prospetov tandem. I don't see Spencer Knight as being a thing that the Coyotes would want. So sure, it meets the offer of a young player, a prospect at a first, but it doesn't fit with what I think the team's long-term future is.
Sure.
And I've just been seeing all these offers, and I'm like, do you know who the Coyotes are, or what their plan is? Like anything about their prospect pool? Because just some of these things, I'm just like, okay, you put forward your best players, your best prospects. They don't address any needs that we have, so probably a no on that one.
Sure.
But I mean, anyone can get traded, so I'm never going to say it's not going to happen. I just think they'd sell really low at this point, and I'm not really impressed with any of the offers.
I think that's fair. It all depends on the return. I've kind of been saying all along, if Chychrun gets dealt, I think Coyotes fans ultimately will be happy, not because Chychrun is gone, obviously, but because of the return that they would get, which it should be astronomical. And why not? You're under no need to move him, right? He's got a team-friendly contract for multiple years beyond this year. There is zero rush to move this kid. So, Haynes, let's come over to you. Jakob Chychrun, do you think this happens? Does he get moved this year?
I actually had the honor and kind of the privilege, I guess, to talk about this the other day on the Hockey Writers podcast with Tom Pepper and all that. And I got to talk about Jakob Chychrun. And, my kind of thought process was at the beginning of the season, we heard this. You obviously were not a fan. No one was a fan. No one thought it was going to happen. They thought it was, he was good as on this team for the long haul. But as of recently, we've learned that no one besides maybe Clayton Keller right now is safe for the future on this team. And Bill Armstrong's listening to any and every offer on anybody on this team for the most part. So it kind of went from, is he going to get traded to when? Because the possibility, the more and more you hear of it, the more likely it seems like the team is looking much more into the option of moving him. And, like you said, at the end of the day, we don't want him moved. But if we do, fans should expect a haul of a return. I'm talking we could see a year of the rebuild shaved off, especially if you're getting a guy like Anton Lundell. I'm hearing some offers with New York Rangers that have come through. The Ducks, the Kings, those prospects they have down there. I mean, fans don't want to see him go, but at the end of the day, whoever we trade him for is going to absolutely skyrocket this team and give him a huge momentum boost to really get over that hump and get that rebuild going a whole year ahead of plan.
Absolutely. I think those are all really, really good call outs. For some context, and Haynes, you already called some of them out. Potential suitors: the Anaheim Ducks, the Boston Bruins, the Columbus Blue Jackets. We already talked about Florida, the LA Kings, and the New York Rangers, all rumored to be in the mix. Final thoughts from me, I would say maybe it's become a little bit easier to picture with the emergence of Clayton Keller as a clear team leader. Honestly, heading into this season, and perhaps I was in the minority, but I looked at Chychrun as probably the future captain, to be honest. That's just how I felt heading into the season. And I don't think I feel that way anymore. I think Clayton Keller is really separating himself from the pack and stepped up into a leadership role, partially because Chychrun has been out for a while too, but Keller's just playing good hockey. So regardless, I think that's all really, really good points, something to keep in mind. But I think one thing we can all agree on, this is not as unimaginable as it may have seemed in September. So there's been some interesting movement of the proverbial trade meter, and we'll see where that winds up. So speaking of which, Haynes, putting you on the spot real quick, because you mentioned no one else is safe other than Clayton Keller, but I object, because the one, the only, and if anybody knows, he knows, Craig Morgan reported, again, earlier today, I believe he first kind of brought it up last week, but Lawson Crouse is safe. Lawson Crouse is not going to be moved. According to Craig Morgan, Bill Armstrong is not listening to offers. He wants Crouse here. And, the question is that good? Is that okay that Crouse is not untouchable, but he won't be going anywhere? And a little context for you at home really quick. 20 points in 40 games this season. He's had a career high twice of 25. So the 24-year-old's got a real good shot at having a career year in total points this season. So with that said, Haynes, we want to start with you. And you wrote about him earlier this year and the type of season he needed to have, and he's having it. So should Lawson Crouse be safe, or should Bill Armstrong be listening to offers on him?
I actually, it was funny. I think I had brought it up 2 podcasts ago when Elliot Freeman had first mentioned that he had made a bet with someone making the kind of assumption that Crouse was going to be on Tampa Bay or someone on the East Coast by the trade deadline. So to see Bill Armstrong come out and kind of say Crouse is a guy we may not for the future, but we see on our team for the next few years was a huge boost for Crouse, and it's a deserved boost. Crouse is having a really good season.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say I was magical and called it, but I called it that he was going to have a good season. He really showed in the preseason that he was ready to take that next step, and it was good for the team for him to do that, considering where he was drafted by the Florida Panthers, and he hadn't lived up to what he was originally drafted by. So to see him have the year he is, it's good the guys to keep him around. He's a big physical guy, but he's also turning into a very skilled guy, very good two-way player who can score and defend, and he sets up real nice with guys like Clayton Keller, and he works really well with guys like Phil Kessel. So I'm happy to see him. I don't think Bill Armstrong listens to offers unless something, like we said before, outstanding comes out his way. I think Crouse could easily, most likely, end up seeing himself with the Coyotes for the long-term future.
I think that's really, really all good points. And if you guys haven't at home, Google it, check out Haynes' article on Crouse, because he wrote it before the season started, if I'm not mistaken. And he was right on the money. So with that said, Carl, over to you. Your thoughts on the type of season Lawson Crouse is having, and should he be safeguarded by Armstrong?
He is definitely the type of player that I think Bill Armstrong looks for. Just like watching the team this year compared to the last season under Tocchet, it is night and day for like the physicality that this team is displaying. And I think in the future, as we get to less veterans, less kind of plugs in the system, that physicality is going to go away a little. We're going to get some more skill, and that's a good thing. But Crouse is going to keep that physicality there. He has that physical edge to his game. So I can understand Armstrong, wanting to keep him around. I do want to point out he is in the final year of a contract. He's a pending RFA, 4.6 over 3 years. So he's due for quite a big pay raise.
Yep.
But I can also see a contender making like a real offer for Crouse. So I think he is safe for now. But I mean, like Haynes was saying, like if something big comes along, Armstrong's going to take it. And I think Crouse is the type of player who is going to warrant something big, just because he has like all those untouchables that are intangibles that everyone's always talking about.
Yep. And as you mentioned, Carl, a great point about being a pending RFA. I think if he's a pending UFA, we're probably having an entirely different discussion.
Absolutely.
Because there's really no sense in hanging on to him at that part. But having his rights as half the battle here and trading those away would have to be pretty convincing, wouldn't you think?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Especially because you imagine he's going to go for something long-term.
Yeah.
He's at least showed some level of stability as an NHL player that is worth a long-term contract.
Yep, exactly. So all really good points, boys, I got to say. So we're going to move on to the next topic here. And in the spirit of the trade deadline, and I know we're still a little ways away, but I mean, we were talking about Chychrun and talking about Crouse. So let's keep it on topic here. What do you want to see the Coyotes do at the trade deadline? Obviously sell. Duh. Okay, we get it. But what do you want to see them accomplish at the trade deadline? And I've got one wish and one wish only, and that's assets. Keep bringing them in. Keep bringing in those draft picks. You've already got 3 first rounders, so even 8th, right? Or no, I guess if they got one more, they'd have an 8th of the draft. If they got one more first rounder, they've got 5 second rounders. I mean, it's ridiculous. And you can bring up even more. Again, you're probably only going to get a first rounder now for a Chychrun or someone like that. I don't, you're not going to turn Kessel around, sadly, for a first round draft pick. But the question remains, and I don't think in terms of positions, like you were saying earlier, Carl, I don't think that there's any specific position to target. To me, it's all about bring in those assets. So let's toss it to you, Carl. What would you like to see the Coyotes address at the trade deadline this year?
Specifically, I want to see them add more prospects. I think they have a lot of picks. I like the picks.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're going to add some more, but seeing Scott Wheeler of The Athletic put out the prospect pool list this past week, and the Coyotes being 20th, with like the likes of the Colorado Avalanche and the Vegas Golden Knights, those are not teams that you think are deep in a prospect pool because they're winning now. Like the Coyotes definitely need to add to that, and they need players who are going to be ready in not necessarily the short term, but like the midterm. It's why I think they're going to continue the trend of drafting like overagers, because we're seeing like Janis Mosier step up right away. But we need players who are going to be like a year or two away. You're not necessarily going to be able to draft too many of those, maybe like one or two in the first round, but like we need to fill in the gap a little bit. And I think prospects are the way to go with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes perfect sense. Any way you slice and dice it, the cupboard is pretty empty. Yeah. They've got, like you said earlier in the show, Carl, there's Prosvetov in Tucson. There's, he is supposedly the goalie of the future. So, we'll see. But aside from that, and a few others here and there, Cam Crotty, there you've heard some jabber about and things like that. But for the most part, the cupboard is pretty empty, and one way or another, that needs to start getting restocked like yesterday. So, Haynes, over to you. Your wish list for trade deadline 2022 for the Arizona Coyotes.
Yeah. Y'all both said exactly what, me and any other fan, if you've watched the Coyotes at all this season and will be watching for the next 4 years, you want to see the team build for the future. Build and build and build. Keep acquiring picks, keep acquiring prospects. If that means taking on aging veteran contracts like they did this all season, do it. Because at the end of the day, the only way you're really going to set this in motion is by having to make the tough decision to move on from bigger name guys, your star players, to bolster yourself for a more successful future run with the hopes that you can compete in a Central Division that is crazy good. So I hope the Coyotes can just kind of keep that mindset of, not whole scorched earth, blow everything up. We've kind of seen that already, but now start retooling and rebringing in. And if it means taking on some bad contracts, take on some bad contracts. This team honestly has no problem doing it. We've seen greats like Chris Pronger, Pavlock, Marian Hossa all play in Arizona. At this point, might as well just add a couple more on if you can. See if like any other guys out there. Maybe Rick DiPietro's contract with the Islanders is still up. Maybe we can get the last 4 years of that contract off the books. Just whatever you can do to get guys in, do it to get the picks.
Take on Bobby Bonilla's contract from the New York Mets while you're at it. Haynes, that was fantastic, by the way. And God, I remember what version of NHL, 15, maybe 16, when they took on Datsuk's contract. Yep. And there was a glitch when I was playing online, and I was able to take them from scratch. They had their normal rating. Yep. And there was like Hossa and Datsuk, where it was incredible. And
you could play with them with their full over 86 overall rating.
EA Sports has since unfortunately addressed that glitch, and if that happens, they're just a 70 overall. But that was exciting. But man, do I love talking hockey with you guys, just like we love talking hockey with you at home. Don't forget to sign up for the Hockey Writers Morning Skate at morningskate.io so you don't miss any of the best daily hockey newsletter on the planet. It's delivered every weekday at 8 a.m. sharp. Be the first to know what's happening in the world of hockey, because we'll bring it to you. You know we love doing it. All right. Well, we talked about this a little bit earlier as well. We are halfway through the year, 41 games, I think, actually, as of this taping. It might be 42. I need to remember, but
41.
Either way, we're right there, halfway point. So it's time for some midterm grades. And this was not fun in high school, but maybe it'll be a little more fun now when we're giving the grades out. So going to make it quick and easy. We got 2 midterm grades to go through. First is going to be the team collectively, what do you give the team? And it's such a loaded question. And I can barely even answer it because I've gone back and forth on my own assessment because we know the team's no good, but at the same time, they've kind of performed above expectations. But at the same time, if you're performing above expectations, but you're not good, do you get a passing grade? So I'm actually going to live in that D+ world right there, because to me, again, the team has hands down performed above expectations. You've seen some flashes. You've seen some players step up, like Clayton Keller, like Karel Vejmelka. You've seen some good play out of the new kids, like JJ Mosier. So to me, certainly below average, right? But I'm not ready to give them a failing grade. There's a lot of reasons why they should, and I'll be interested to hear what you boys have to say as well. But I'm just not ready to give them a failing grade, so I'm going to toss them at a D+ and call it a day, just like I did in geometry sophomore year. And I'm here to tell the tale. All right, Haynes, let's come to you next. Haynes, what are your midseason grades for the team as a whole?
For a team as a whole, I would agree with you. I think this team is D+. I think saying C- is teetering a little too much. I would say
I was on a C-, by
I
the
was
way.
on
I was this close to a C-, but I just don't feel like average. Anyway,
I agree with you there. I think C- is too average, and I think that there's teams that are doing better than the Coyotes but aren't competing for a playoff spot that I think are C average teams, and I don't think the Coyotes are one of the C average teams. But D+ would be in the right area. I think they're performing to about the level people thought they were going to, but at the same time, they're surprising a lot of people still. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they've, in their last 15 games, played way better than they did in their first 11 games. They didn't win a single game all season in the first 11. And like you said, guys like Clayton Keller, emergence of a season, guys like Lawson Crouse having a breakout season, Karel Vejmelka from the Czech Republic, first professional season in North America, at one point was like in 10th in the NHL in save percentage among goalies. Yep.
Travis Boyd has stepped up.
Travis Boyd stepped up. Andrew Ladd's had a good season. Yeah. He's been noticeable this year. And that's at the end of the day, they still do have a lot of guys who are aging veterans guys, a lot of younger guys that they aren't meshing as well. It's not a team that's going to be competitive, but at the same time, they're surprising a lot of people. And you can really tell in their recent play that this team is finding more of a footing as this season's gone along.
Good points. If only they didn't have to play the second period. So, Carl, want to know your thoughts on midseason grades collectively for the team. What do they get? What do you give them?
So apparently I'm an optimist, and I don't know when this happened in my life.
I like it. I was hoping somebody was going to be.
I originally said C+. I'm actually going to drop that down to a C, having heard your guys' arguments. This is exactly where I thought the team was going to be. They are not overperforming. They are not underperforming. So to me, that's the C. It's where I should be expecting them. You guys talked about a lot of good players. Like Travis Boyd is, I think, having a very underrated season. He's about to have, I think, a career high in points, which is
and he's already got in goals.
Yeah, he is definitely like. If you asked me before this year if Travis Boyd was going to be re-signed by the Coyotes, I would have said no. I would have been like, that's a weird question. Probably not. Now I'm like, he's got good chemistry with Keller. He's working it. He puts in his effort. I like it. And there's just so many stories where I'm just looking at individual players. There is no one I think is slacking on this team. Which is phenomenal. Like, if you look at a player like Phil Kessel, who agreed to be traded to the Coyotes just to play with Rick Tocchet, is now in a rebuild year, and yet is suddenly having one of his best playmaking seasons.
I know.
Because he's not scoring goals as much, but he is like putting the puck on sticks.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. Like, I just, every single game, I'm like, you guys are doing like 5 things wrong, but there's like 2 things that I just did not expect you to be doing right.
Yep.
And I'm there for that. And so I'm like, I feel good about what this team is doing.
Yeah.
And I wish they were taking fewer penalties. I wish they weren't like getting stuck in their own head as much. There's definitely work to be done, but I'm liking what I'm seeing so far of head coach turning his system, because I think he deserves a lot of credit for.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Carl.
No.
Totally agree. In fact, shameless plug, dropped an article about that right before they have lost collectively 2 or 3 games in a row now, but why they're playing better. And it's because they're learning Torini's system. Nick Schmaltz was very blunt about it last week when he said, we were looking over our shoulders. Am I in the right place? This was after their win against Montreal, which was a pretty good game. They felt good about themselves after, and things like that. So I agree. Torini deserves a tip of the cap, and hopefully he can continue to develop the players. I also love the optimism, to be honest, because as I mentioned at the start of the segment, you can look at it one of 2 ways. You can grade them collectively overall, or you can grade them against themselves with how they were expected to perform. And you did the latter, and I think you did the right thing. So I can get behind that. Definitely get behind that. So good stuff. Now let's switch gears ever so slightly and see what grade so far are you giving GM Bill Armstrong? And I'm going to start an absolute A. Despite the performance of the team, this is where, to your point, Carl, earlier, you expect the team to be. But what Armstrong has done has put this team in a position to get more assets, get more prospects with an empty cupboard that he inherited. Mind you, they've got Dylan Gunther in Edmonton only because he was able to flip OEL for a first rounder to Vancouver, because the Coyotes had no first round pick last year thanks to John Chychrun. So I think, it's too early, obviously, to grade him overall. You're not going to know until you're 3-4 years into a rebuild, where things are kind of starting to emerge, like what you're seeing in Detroit under Steve Yzerman. But I mean, I don't see personally, I don't see what he could have done differently to put this team in a position to where it may be successful in 4 or 5 years. So I give GM Bill Armstrong an A right out of the gate. Carl, curious as to your thoughts. What do you give Bill Armstrong to this point in his tenure as GM with a grade?
So I went with an A-. I think the Shane Gostisbehere trade is proving to be one of the best trades in NHL history.
Absolutely. In NHL history. I love it.
It was for $1. Like, I think Craig Morgan finally tweeted out what the future considerations were. It's $1. And you get Shane Gostisbehere and a second-round pick. He is third on the team in assists. Second on the team in assists, third in points. Like, that's just a phenomenally one-sided trade. I do not like that Chychrun has gone from completely off the books to possibly being traded, almost likely being traded in the span of 3 months, with him having all of the normal growing pains that should be expected for a defenseman becoming a number one. Like, so I don't like that we're having this.
That's fair.
And I think that we can maybe see a little bit more from Armstrong on that, because if you say that like a player's not going to be traded, and then 3 months later they've done nothing that's seriously wrong, and they're being not necessarily shocked, but you're listening to offers, like, I get it, but it doesn't sit right with me. So I knocked it down to an A-.
I think that's very fair. I would rushing to his defense. I would say that the Jakob Chychrun storyline has been driven by Elliot Friedman.
Yeah.
And been driven by all of my colleagues here at the Hockey Writers, because I'm pretty sure everybody's put out an article about why they want to get Chychrun.
It is definitely a media-driven thing for Chychrun. But I mean, that's part of a GM's job to deal with the media.
Yep. All good points, Carl. All good points as usual. So, Haynes, over to you. Your thoughts, your assessment of Bill Armstrong's tenure to this point. Where you got him?
Yeah, I have an A+. I'm higher than an A-. I have him higher than an A. I think the Chychrun thing also, like you said, Carl, that's something that may not sit well with fans that, 3 months ago he seemed untouchable and now they're listening to offers, but that's journalism. That's media for you. Anybody's name. I could go tweet today that Brad Marchand could be on the block, and if it garnered enough attention, you could see that going around as a thing.
Please do that.
I'm not saying that honestly that's what it is. It's just rumors, but at the same time, that is what it is. It's rumors. It's someone heard something from someone and tweeted about it, and it was someone that was high enough up in influence that people bought into it, and now it's going everywhere. And I think that's something that Bill Armstrong can't honestly do something about. I mean, you look at how the year he struggled with Chychrun, and some people could see that as an option on a reason to move him now and stop for the future and all that. But I mean, other than that, I don't think he's done anything that would seem less than an A+ in my opinion. The Shane Gostisbehere trade was an insane trade. He picked up Andrew Ladd. Honestly, Andrew Ladd hasn't played a full NHL season in a while. Is performing way better than you thought he would have. He's producing good, solid minutes on the team, and he got him for absolutely nothing from the New York Islanders. And guys like Karel Vejmelka, pull this guy out from the Czech Republic, never played a game in the NHL, and he's one of the talks of the NHL. Literally all the time when I turn on TNT, ESPN, I hear something about him when the Coyotes are on TV about how bright of a spot this kid has become. I've been hearing recent extension talks with Karel Vejmelka going on, and I don't look at anything he's done and think, man, Bill Armstrong really could have done that better. I think he's done everything he can to properly give this team the true rebuild that they have never fully gone through, and it's going to pay off huge dividends.
Yep. Your last statement, I think, should not get lost on people, because the Coyotes have never been through a ground up rebuild. And it's full disclosure, it's too early to be giving Bill Armstrong a grade, right? Because we're in the worst of a rebuild, which is the first year where everything's been torn apart, and there's literally, you can't even see the future except for a superstar skating up in Edmonton with the Oil Kings. There's no, I mean, I know we talk about pros with talk, but let's be honest, like, there's no superstar goalie of the future. There's no phenom defenseman, which is why everybody gets uptight about Chychrun and things like that. So you're in the midst of the most difficult year, or one of the most difficult years in a rebuild, which is year 1, year 2. And it's early to be giving Armstrong the marks. But I think what's key here is that nobody's going less than an A. Yeah. There are moves that rebuilding GMs, or even GMs who are building teams from scratch, Ron Francis, when people start scratching their heads, and it's the first year, so I think there's something to be said for that, and it was super good perspective. And we'll see how things unfold. I'm looking forward to analyzing it with you guys. That's for sure. So, all right, we got one more segment on the show, and it's become kind of a fun little spot for us. Good old Tankathon 2022. Speaking of the team tanking, let's talk about a potential first-round pick that the Coyotes might look at. And today we are going to talk about Frank Nazar III. Second week in a row, actually, we've had an American that we've been highlighting, a center in the U.S. National Development Program out of Michigan, Mount Clemens, Michigan, my stomping grounds. He is committed to the University of Michigan for 2022-23. 20 points, evenly split, perfect down the middle, 10 goals, 10 assists in 13 games in U.S. Development Juniors, and then 42 points in 35 games with the national U18 team. So the kid's got some talent. He's right now kind of pegged to go anywhere from seems to mid to late teens, maybe even early 20s, but seems to be high up on the board, high enough to be a first rounder. And remember, the Coyotes don't just have a lottery pick. They've got what are probably going to be a couple of late rounders too. What with Montreal's pick is going to become Carolina's pick, because Montreal will get to keep their top 10 pick. So that one's going to be late. And then Colorado is the other one, right? So that one's going to be late. So these are relevant discussions. And Haynes, I think we're going to start with you, because I feel like I always steal your thunder in these segments. What have you seen? What have you been able to dig up on Frank Nazar III a center winger out of Michigan. What would the Coyotes be getting if they drafted him?
Yeah, Frank Nazar III is he's a good kid. I mean, you just provide the stats there, 20 with, the developmental team and, 42 with the US 18 team.
Mm-hmm.
And, that those are eye-catching stats right there. I mean, it's nothing over the top like you would see, with like guys like maybe McDavid and, his draft year, but it's solid numbers for a guy that you said is, a mid-teens to maybe early 20s pick. And, from what I've seen from him, he's got great speed. He's really offensively skilled. He kind of is able to kind of generate off the rush, and he has a really quick shot. And that's a lot of things that teams are looking at when they want to find guys that can develop quickly and make the jump in, 2 to 3 years time. And I think he has that. I think he has the talent to do just that, to make that jump in 2 to 3 years. But I think he needs to add strength because he's very undersized. But I think if he could do that and he can add a little bit more into that size and that frame, I think you could look at a guy who could easily in 2 to 3 years end up shocking a lot of people and being on an NHL roster.
Sure. And I wouldn't even say it'd be a shock if he made an NHL roster, but to your point, maybe he ends up sneaking onto the top line. It's all about how he develops. So super, super good points there. Carl, guess what? You got the last word on today's show. So bring us home. Your thoughts on Frank Nazar III and what the Coyotes could potentially be getting if they draft him.
So first, I always want to shout out the United States National Development Program. Just in my career covering hockey, it has gone from maybe this is a thing that we could take somewhat seriously to an actual serious development program, and it is phenomenal to see that growth. I love it.
World Juniors were fun last year, weren't they?
The big thing that stood out when I was looking at Frank Nazar III is his weight, because he's 5'10". Elite Prospects lists them at 174, which is about what Clayton Keller, I think, weighs now, in a same size. So, I mean, let's be real. Juniors players will occasionally add a couple of inches, a couple of pounds. It's fine. But I think that's a good, solid, base for a player. If he is being listed at that now, I could only imagine what he will be in a couple of years. And looking at how much better Clayton Keller has played since adding on a couple of pounds of muscle, it is phenomenal. I'm just looking at a 5'10", 180 pounder in the future. That could be a real threat if he can bring that skill. I hate to disagree with Haynes, but I don't think he's too undersized. I think we have seen more undersized players in the past, and it shouldn't really scare anyone away, which I think it used to. I think he could be a good fit for the Coyotes and add some offense.
Yep. Hey, good points. We're okay to disagree here. This is a safe space. All opinions are valued. And that's what makes the world go round after all. So I love it. It'd be boring if everybody agreed all the time. So I think we could all agree, regardless, they'd be getting a very talented winger / center who has potential to play a top 6 role in the future. And it would be exciting, and the Coyotes would certainly be lucky if they have the opportunity to select him. So good stuff. In case we haven't convinced you at home with our first 2 plugs, sign up for the Morning Skate newsletter. You will get to relive some of Wes McCauley's most legendary moments as an NHL referee, much like 5 minutes for fighting. Gotta love those. You gotta love those. This kind of content is exactly what's going to put a smile on your face at home. So make sure you join the fun at morningskate.io. And gentlemen, that is it for our show. Thank you so much at home for tuning in every week. We love it. Carl, thanks for taking the time out to join us as well. It's always a pleasure to have you on. That'll do it for us, and we will see you next time. Cheers.